You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact. You're part of our collective. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This time we have been watching Borg. It was written by Renée Echevarria, directed by Robert Lederman, and first aired the week of 11th of May 1992. James, what happens in this one?
While scouting a system for colonisation, the Enterprise hears a distress call. Upon answering, they find a lone surviving Borg, third of 5. Against protests, Crusher insists on trying to help him, eventually bringing him on board the Enterprise. Troi thinks Picard may experience trauma with a Borg on board, but he insists that he's fine, but decides to use the Borg to send a virus into the collective and wipe them out for good. However, while studying him, Geordi bonds with him, even naming him Hugh, and he begins to show signs of becoming an individual and understanding that resistance is not futile. Even established Borg hater Guinan starts to think he's a fairly decent dude. Can they really send him back to his demise? Or even worse, to return in a disappointing Season 6 episode?
Well, Alex, you'd never seen this episode before. What did you make of it?
I mean, it's nice to have a good episode again, isn't it?
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah. It feels like a weight is lifted. No, I mean, clearly it's a properly good episode, dealing with that theme that so many of the best episodes seem to have dealt with, genocide.
Is it wrong? I mean, that's a question. We have to weigh it up. And it's sort of shades of grey, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some interesting elements that are not discussed, but we'll come to that.
We've actually not seen the Borg since the Best of Both Worlds, and you'd think if you're going to bring them back, you probably do so with all the bells and whistles. This is event television, and a lot of shows probably would do that, but this is actually a relatively small, quite thoughtful approach, which is maybe different to what you'd expect. Certainly different to what they did on Voyager, for example.
Or indeed Picard.
This season, the Borg, again, a little different. Sure, the Borg, remember Next Generation? The Borg, it was all about the Borg. When actually the Borg, they barely show up.
I do tend to think most of the best Borg episodes, with the exception of a few of the biggest ones, tend to be the really small episodes. Because it's just, the Borg just don't work on a big scale because they're too unbeatable. Interesting
here that they state that they're at war with the Borg, and you sort of think, are you? You've had one massive incident which has depleted your fleet, and the Enterprise obviously encountered them when they were thrown into the Delta Quadrant, but it doesn't seem that there's a constant battle readiness, that they are always fighting the Borg. The Borg threat seems fairly much in the background.
They had lost colonies before that. I mean, there were reports going back as early as Season 1 they were talking about, where there were colonies across the neutral zone that they'd lost contact. I know that wasn't originally meant to be the Borg, but I think now retroactively we consider that to be because of them.
I mean, I guess partly that's the result of episodic television, isn't it, really? It's been there before, but we haven't really looked at it for a while. I mean, the same's true of Picard's PTSD. It's not a new concept, but it feels quite some time since we dealt with it. You know, it's not like every time he goes over to a plug socket he starts hyperventilating or anything like that. You go, oh yeah, he was assimilated. Yes, that is right. That was a while ago.
And I thought this episode was particularly interesting because I've always thought First Contact seemed a little bit, movie Picard, he has to feel the big emotions, he has to feel vengeful, he hates the Borg, but he dealt with that in the TV show, and he wasn't like that. But this actually feels very connected to First Contact, I think. He clearly does have that pain, and he does have that feeling, going as far as to not go and talk to the Borg in this episode. His first instinct is, how can we weaponize this? How can we take down the Borg? How can we use them for a virus? It's all well and good saying, oh, we rescued him, we're displaying compassion, when actually that's not really the intention from there. And a very interesting sort of use of Troi with him talking. Actually, to start, right at the start of the video, when they're looking at the sun, and Troi says, it's beautiful, but dangerous. And that's some placeholder dialogue, isn't it? I just thought, you could have done a little bit better. Just give it some nuance. But hey, anyway, she thinks, hey, maybe you want to talk about your trauma, Captain Picard. And he's like,
no, fine, thank you.
Yeah, it's very dismissive, but that's a good way to flag that he is not over this. He still has some residuals, and she keeps going, they assaulted you, they took things away from you, they mind raped you, they beat you, they disfigured you. Yeah, thank you, counsellor, that will be all. It's good list, counsellor Troi.
He needs to confront what happened, even though there was a whole episode about him confronting what happened.
Maybe you just don't get over some things.
I mean, are we saying that this is now part of his character to process what happened, go a few seasons or a film, and then forget about the fact that he's processed what happens and just go back to step one again of kill them all? Because that's what happens. It's happened 4 times now.
He wants to kill them by showing them a dangerous shape.
So let's deal with the plot minutiae. There is a distress call. They answer a distress call because that's what they do. They find it's the Borg. It's a little cube. They go to the planet Hellset, which, let's be honest, looks a little bit sad here. It does the job. Don't get me wrong, but maybe we've moved on from that particular configuration.
I mean, I did watch it and wonder if it was particularly suffering from watching it being upscaled in Blu-ray, or if it just always looked a bit naff.
I think both. It was never meant to be seen upscaled and on a big TV like that, 20-inch in standard definition. That's all you were really expecting. But again, it does the job. You have quite a nice, I don't know if it's a matte painting, if it's a model of a little Borg ship, and you have various corpses dotted around, one with its brain exposed, which is delightful.
I'm just amused by the concept that all of their ships are in cube form.
No, they have spheres as well.
Not till the movies.
so that all of their ships can be stacked like an Amazon driver trying to pack a lorry.
And it's here they make the decision. We have Dr. Crusher saying we should save the Borg, we should help the Borg. It's our duty as Starfleet, no matter who it is, to help people in need. Classic sort of Doctor argument. Good decision.
I mean, ultimately it is, but
yeah.
I suppose it rings true for Dr. Crusher, but at the same time, you kind of have to take the point of view of everyone else when they say it's a bit dangerous to do that.
I don't think it's first appearance weirdness or early stuff, but especially in later episodes in the movies, how much damage a single Borg drone could do. They could effectively take over a ship. They could infect lots of people and make a mini collective, I guess. But here, they seem mostly harmless. If you put the dampening fields down, you can isolate them, you can shut off the voices, you can essentially try to rehabilitate them. But that's never really the intention.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's very much that sort of zombie movie trope of someone has their loved one that's become a zombie and they've sort of chained them up in a room and they're trying to keep them quiet and try and deal with them, and then invariably they break out and eat everyone's brains. Whereas here they're sort of playing that through of the actual rehabilitation happens.
Well, it's not dissimilar to what they would then do in Doctor Who with the Daleks. bring back the biggest enemies, but just have a single one of them and then rehabilitate them, even though the main character wants them destroyed.
I hadn't even considered that, but that does seem remarkably similar. But yeah, I think it is a better story for it being on that scale of the individual. It's big deal, obviously, to bring the Borg back, but you're able to tell a kind of human rehabilitation story. I'm sure you can read many good sort of Star Trek allegories and metaphors into this. There's also a very much not particularly unsubtle the needs of the one sometimes outweigh the needs of the many, the sort of classic Star Trek movie idea, which, you know, is great. I always like that kind of thing. It's all very Star Trek. How do you humanize the worst enemy? How do you tell a story that makes you feel compassion for what you think is just a wall of evil, something completely irredeemable, and yet here you are feeling sympathy for this Borg character, and that's just great, and it's interesting. Obviously, it's something they'll do a lot more of in Star Trek Voyager. You know, this is the Hugh character is a template for 7 of 9, essentially. This kind of bringing a Borg onto a Starfleet vessel, and what happens next is that is the story they told on a much bigger scale in Voyager, but that definitely wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for this episode of The Next Generation.
I mean, on that, one thing that actually this episode doesn't really address, but I know is sort of covered in other Star Trek, where feeling empathy for the character, and as you say, not just being a wall of evil. And later on, when we get into the oxymoron of a morality of genocide, the one thing that's not really properly addressed in this is it treats them as they are another species, which, yeah, kind of true, but they are another species by harvesting another species. It's not that they exist in their own right as such. They exist by taking over another existing race.
You could look at it in one way as they're almost an analogy for a cult.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy.
And actually, I mean, Voyager kind of tackles this in a different way with another alien race quite well. An alien race who harvest organs to survive, and does actually treat them with compassion in a way. But yeah, I mean, do the Borg have a right to exist on their own, even when they exist simply because the only reason they exist is because they've taken lives from others?
Yeah, which again sort of almost brings us back to that zombie trope. I don't know that the morality, as they're presenting it here, is necessarily quite as clear-cut as the episode presents it. It does a good job of dealing with it in the way that it does. I just think that there is a further element that isn't explored here.
There is another element that they don't really explore, and that's the fact that they rescued Picard from being a Borg, so why couldn't they rescue Hugh? Why were they so against that at the start?
I was sort of always waiting for someone to say, your name's Hugh, but you would have had a name before. You know, you would have... I don't know why I'm doing it like some sort of jive talker on a street.
I like it. Keep going. Do the rest of the podcast.
Your name was Hugh. You used to have a different name, but you don't remember it. I'm being played by Danny John Jules. It's never a thing that's really addressed the idea of, well, you weren't always like this. It's not that they're ignoring it's a thing, because obviously there's regular mention about being assimilated and all that, but there isn't really an explanation. It's not a bad thing. I don't know that this episode would necessarily be better for it. I was just surprised that it wasn't a feature.
I don't think Picard is ever really addressed in terms of, oh, wow, you can take one out of the collective and you can reclaim them, you can make them themselves again. Because even in First Contact, Picard's big speech is, you may see your former crewmates, shoot them, you're doing them a favour. and you just sort of think, well, no, not necessarily. It's the ideas that aren't addressed. Obviously, Picard is saying, okay, come up with a way to infect the collective. We'll take this one Borg and we'll put them back. And I don't think there's ever any effort to say, then we will have a massive refugee crisis. Then we will have all these individuals. Then we will have all these races that need to be rehabilitated. There's no consequence other than they will be wiped out. And that's quite a strange, nebulous thought. But I guess that very idea of discussing a genocide of anyone is just this big idea without accounting for the actual suffering and the consequences of the individuals. Because as you say, if you see it as that it's a cult, they've been indoctrinated, they've been brainwashed, they can't help it in some ways, or they've been made addicts and they're having to follow this around. It's just there's no way to sort of say, okay, it's not their fault.
No, I think that's the thing, is that it's almost being treated as analogous for racism, and I don't think that you can necessarily just straight use that as an analogy. A cult is probably closer.
I know ultimately their plan kind of works, which is to send Hugh back and he'll bring individuality to the Borg. But why would that work?
If you actually think about that, it makes no sense, because every time they take anyone into the collective, that's an individual, right? So it's not like... Is Hugh's individuality unique? It's sort of assuming that the Borg do not assimilate people. It sort of feels like, oh, this is a Borg, and we've given this. Like, in that first episode where the little Borg baby chamber, it's sort of like, oh, that's where all the Borg come from. They're Borg babies and they grow up, and none of them ever have individuality. So if you introduce that, but the way they work is by taking other people, and they all have individuality. I guess you could argue that maybe it's introducing it into his Borg systems as well as his I don't know what kind of alien Hugh is. Is he human? But it's introducing it after they're a Borg, and that's something anomalous.
I suppose you could argue that he won't be assimilated because he already has been assimilated, so he will just rejoin the collective with the individuality. Yeah. Does the individuality get purged when you get assimilated? Or is it by being part of the collective? I mean, I'm criticising it, but ultimately it works. We know it works because of the season 6 episode.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not criticising it, saying, and therefore this episode doesn't work. It's interesting the choices that are made and the ones that are skipped over. And obviously, ultimately, they're made for a reason. They're made because they're trying to tell one particular story rather than another. I mean, it'd be the same reason you wouldn't put Data with Hugh, because the story would not generate itself. Or at least if it would, it'd be really bloody dull.
I suppose on that note, you have a couple of character stories going on here. Obviously, you have the Picard one, which we've spoken about a bit, and we will talk about some more. But the other side of that is Geordi. Can Geordi make friends with anyone who's not a robot? We don't know. But this idea that Geordi, who I guess in some ways is meant to be the fun one, the friendly, nice guy in this cast, he is the one who doesn't judge anyone on who they are or what their background is or what race they are or anything. He's just the friendly, cool guy. So do you think he's the right character to bring out the humanity in another?
It works in this episode on an individual basis. I think that's the strength of episodic television, that you can kind of twist a character to fit the story where it needs to. We all can easily forget the episode where he's being inappropriate with the hologram of a real person.
I mean, ultimately, I don't know who else you'd drop in there, to be perfectly honest.
Imagine if it was Worf.
Oh, that'd be a very short episode, wouldn't it? I mean, Worf doesn't work. Riker doesn't work, unless you want to see him trying to put his dick in the socket. Data wouldn't work. Picard, obviously, there is already Picard. And I mean, it's not just Geordi, is it? Let's be honest. It's Geordi and Picard, and you need that balance of the two sides. So let's take Picard out of the equation. Who's that leave? Crusher, again, is involved, and Troi. None of whom really have... I mean, I suppose you could have Troy's empath stuff, but I mean, I feel like it would be a bit torturous. I don't know who else would fit into this role, is the honest answer.
I do think Geordi fits into this role quite well.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, I don't disagree, yeah.
Well, like that Enemy Mine episode that they did in, I think, season 3, where Geordi is the one who has to work with the Romulan. He is the guy who, I don't want to say every man, but maybe I do. He is the one who can cooperate with anybody and can bring out the humanity in anyone. I think that makes sense in a lot of ways.
What if it was O'Brien with the Borg?
Do you know what? I'd like to see that.
I mean, he is kind of the everyman, isn't he?
He is very much the everyman. But I feel he'd sort of punch the Borg in the face at some point. Do you want to play some darts?
With your head.
What do you think of the performance from Jonathan Del Arco as the Borg? Hugh is a memorable character. He is one of the big guest stars, and I think he's very good here. Like, I think this is a really good performance, a difficult one, because you're sort of like playing the Borg as the kind of lost teenage boy being rehabilitated under the care of a watchful guardian, and it's difficult to get that balance right. And he doesn't play it too arch from the start. It's always just lost. It's not really massively hostile. He's got quite a soft voice, but you also are not like, well, this isn't the Borg I know. Disappointing. I want them to be putting up more of a fight. I think it's a really good performance, and it works for this episode.
No, and I think the performance is also in keeping with how you would see an individual drone, even from previous episodes. Because, you know, as they say in the episode itself, when they visited the Borg cube, the Borg drones ignored them, really. They were very passive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a strong guest performance. I mean, it's sort of half a gift, half not, really, to an actor, a role like this, isn't it? Because you have that element of playing the lost boy, as you say, but equally on the other side of it, you're playing someone completely emotionless and very blank slate. So to balance the two, it's and actually have some empathy with that cold slate is I mean it does the job. Be a shame if they were to just bump him off in a spin-off.
What do you think of the crew's reaction overall? It does seem they have one of their good old Star Trek debates. Not to the extent they usually do. I think it's very much like, should we commit genocide? And everyone's basically, yeah, I think we probably should. I think that's seems like the right approach here, Captain. Crusher really the only dissenting voice.
It does feel that everyone is surprisingly happy to go along with this. Like there's very little questioning and very little Captain, considering your prior experience, do you think this might be affecting your judgment? Apart from that scene at the start with Troi, it's almost as if, well, you've satisfied all my misgivings, and then it's only really when they start to see evidence from Hugh later on. It is a bit surprising to see so little pushback, but then I suppose the necessities of getting on with the plot.
Guinan, I thought it was very effective. The way she kind of is just so against type here. It's kind of. I think you do need to remind the audience how dangerous the Borg are at the same time. And I think Guinan, the fact that she is acting so against the way she normally does, is what really reminds the audience of that.
Yeah, I think it's a decent use of Guinan here. We obviously have the fencing scene with Picard. She's very against having the Borg on the ship at all. This is dangerous. This is a bad idea. She is like increasing the stakes by having her experience, her entire race essentially wiped out by the Borg. And then you have the sort of counterpoint scene with Geordi, where he tries to convince her that this Borg exhibits traits that are worthy of redemption. And then again, she goes and sees it. She is the catalyst for Picard to change his mind, essentially, as we've kind of seen before in episodes like The Measure of a Man. But like sometimes when you have Guinan in an episode, you're just like, was Whoopi Goldberg just free this time? But this is actually a good use of her, and it's a nice kind of little arc for the character as well to go through. Very much starts with one position, experiences change, has a different position. So it's effective storytelling with that character and their background. So it very much makes sense that she is in this episode.
And it's impressive the way it kind of fits so much in 45 minutes. You know, so much. I wouldn't call it character development, but the way the characters change their views across 45 minutes, it is very impressive episodic storytelling.
See, it's good when we don't have an episode with a virtual reality clown and a mud bath.
Who knew you could do anything else, though? Yeah, it's all very effective, and I guess it leads to the big confrontation scene. I thought this was interesting. First, they start with Hugh in the holding cell, and Crusher objects, and Picard's like, no, put the Borg in the holding cell so it can't do any damage. Seems like good decision-making, good management. Well done, Picard. And then, when they want to have their conversation, I think you should come to my ready room. Yes, that seems like a good idea.
No, you leave.
I'm not going to go down to the lab.
At that point, they've already established that he isn't completely dangerous. Plus, he is Locutus of Borg, so as if Hugh is going to hurt him.
No, Mr. Worf. Obviously, I'm massively compromised by my prior experience, but you leave. I've got this in hand. Of course.
But a good scene, a good performance from Patrick Stewart. I think he taking on the role of Locutus here.
It's a nice little subversion that he is going to the extreme more than you expect. Very much repeated in First Contact, but worse. I'd say very much repeated in Picard, but I've tried to block it out of my mind, so I can't really recall what happened. I seem to recall there was a dance number.
Jesus.
And then he got hit by a car.
We always have to bring it back to bad Star Trek, don't we?
Well, it's because all the later stuff is trying to emulate this, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, how many stories were there to tell with the Borg? Less than you'd think. And this is a good one. I don't think I will forgive Star Trek Picard for the death of this character. It just such an interesting thing to bring him back. And it's exactly the story we were just talking about. It's like, if you did commit genocide on the Borg, what happens? And then there's this whole community of former Borg, and there's the sort of not very well done racism analysis, and then there's that sort of set up, they're all going to be brought back into the collective, which is never paid off. But that interesting to bring that character back, and you're like, okay, this could be a great story, you could do something interesting here, but it's just one of those dangling threads in Picard, and then they just kill him off pointlessly and like quite cruelly. Like it's not valid or good storytelling.
I can't even remember
and with very little connection to anything.
I can't even remember, how did they kill him now? He wasn't the one where they gouged his eyeball, was it? That was someone else.
No, that was the Borg from Voyager.
Yes, that's right.
That's right.
So how did Hugh die?
I think he got killed by that Romulan prick.
Yeah, a Jacques Vache agent.
Yeah. The incest one.
Yeah, the incest Romulans. And then Seven kills her at the end and goes, "That was for Hugh," when they have not shared any screen time at any point. Seven says that in an ADR line. This episode was written by somebody else who hadn't watched the first half of the season. Oh, God. I don't want to talk about that. I spent more time on Star Trek Picard in my life than anybody needed to.
Oh, actually, when they just remember when they ADR'd that line in, you could see her mouth not moving, couldn't you?
Good. The conclusion here, Hugh is fully an individual. Resistance is not futile. Great for a t-shirt during these trying times, everyone. And they offer him asylum, but he refuses. This sort of does come up later, but do you think, and I've often said that Star Trek or Starfleet seems to operate like terrorist cells or something. Nobody ever tells anyone what they're doing. Like, you've got just admirals doing mad plans over in some... Do you think Picard would have the autonomy to say, well, we've got this opportunity to wipe out the Borg? No, I don't think I'll discuss that with my superiors. I think this is my decision. Does that seem credible? Obviously, it helps with episodic storytelling, but do you think he would have maybe had to run that up the chain of command?
I don't know. It does feel quite often that he just makes decisions and will then report them in at a bi-monthly meeting. Oh, by the way, we started a war. You did what? Didn't we tell you we're at war with the Borg? No, last time you just met them briefly. We've come across a couple of empty colonies since then, but nothing more. Oh, well, very much at war.
Oh, well, I mean, fine. I think it helps with the storytelling, but I guess the conclusion, Hugh has to make a choice, but he decides to basically sacrifice himself for the crew of the Enterprise, and in particular, Geordi. And I don't know, how do you read that relationship? I feel like in the original series, the Borg would have been a sexy woman, and Captain Picard would have humanized them by kissing them. Like, do you think there's any romantic undertones to Hugh and Geordi?
I mean, it feels like there are, but equally, in what's on the page, it comes across more as as a child, really, to me. Mm. But in the final product, yes, it feels that it has more of those tones.
Yeah, I was going to say that Hugh feels younger than he comes across in terms of just how he looks.
For an individual discovering themselves for the first time, like a childlike performance does make sense.
Yes, it's not quite like the Stephen Moffat episode of the last series of Doctor Who, where there was a character that was very clearly supposed to be about 6 years old, but had been cast at about 14. And so was going around talking about her daddy and not really processing the fact that her daddy had just been killed in front of her and was not able to recognise that a hologram was very much not her father.
Anyway, do you think it's a satisfying conclusion? It's one of those kind of, well, luckily we didn't have to make a decision either way in the end.
Yeah, it's another one of those very much have your cake and eat it endings where, as you say, well, good thing we avoided having to make that tough decision. It all worked out nicely. I guess it feels less incongruous than some of them, because it at least feels like the decision is being made by being made by Hugh, so it sort of takes away a bit of that. It's the same as the episode. What was the episode with the non-binary species?
The Outcast.
The Outcast, yeah, kind of similar to the ending of The Outcast in that sense.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it is Hugh's decision. He has the agency in order to make that decision. And that nice moment at the end. I mean, I'm not sure I fully agree with Geordi going down and observing, like, in plain sight, but fine. Okay. Good for the story. And then, Hugh doesn't quite wink at him at the end, but yeah, that's the implication, is that he has retained his sense of self.
And he's definitely not just having his memories erased when he gets back there rather than doing it right then and there.
No, absolutely. Probably one of the best episodes of the season. Very well done. Very few negative things to say about it. And it's nice as you sort of reach this part of the season that you're like, okay, after 23 episodes, you can still come up with a good script. Well done, writer's room. Imagine if they were like that today.
No, we've had some good ones this season, but this is definitely in contention for the best of the season, I would say.
Okay, we're going to discuss a few more things, probably not many more, in the place we call Quickfire.
Quickfire.
Yeah, I've already mentioned it, but the only element that I can't take seriously is their plan to wipe out the Borg. Did they really expect that Hugh would just walk into the room, see a dangerous shape, and just explode?
No, he would just put it into a subroutine and just keep going, well, that shape doesn't seem quite right. Like, I was hoping it was going to be of those sort of impossible stairs going round in a loop.
Well,
like in Labyrinth.
You're on the same length as Phil Farrand, because he believes you could destroy the Borg by showing them an M.C. Escher painting.
There you go.
Do you think this episode would have been better if the title was Hugh Who? or maybe Hiding Hugh?
A Hiding Hugh. That's a great pun, isn't it? Because you know the phrase hiding. Oh, I think that would have been the ultimate trolling if they'd called it Hiding Hugh. Now, something else on the title, right? And on Wikipedia, for example, it is I, Borg, which I think is probably correct. But on the screen, Memory Alpha, it's just I Borg. And is it a pun? Is it a pun on Cyborg? I hope not.
I think isn't it a pun on Cyborg, and it's also a reference to iRobot.
Yeah,
but that's got a comma in it, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think the script had a comma on it, but on screen it didn't.
Oh, that's a massive oversight.
It's ruined all of Star Trek for me, and I'm not going to watch it again.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense if it's not in that vein of iRobot, iClaudius. Okay.
The writer has said it was a reference to iRobot.
I mean, of course.
I know, but I'd always rather bring it back to 1970s British television.
Oh, well I mean, iRobot was a reference to iClaudius, wasn't it?
I'll take your word for it. I'm not actually certain. I mean, it would make sense.
This episode, Hugh is third of 5, establishing their designations by numbers. So later on, obviously, most famously, you have 7 of 9. Not 7th of 9, though. So quite inconsistent there.
Is it possible they just assimilated a race who say things a bit differently, which makes them at a certain point
Italians.
say a difference? Well, I mean, at this point, they say resistance is futile, but then when 7 of 9 joins, they say resistance is futile.
Do you know what that is? And this is indeed a Star Trek convention. It's when Patrick Stewart says it first, and he says an English pronunciation. That's how it gets established in the script, and he would all have said resistance is futile, as the cutest, right? And so the American pronunciation, I assume, is futile.
Yeah. Then Jerry Ryan just didn't get the memo.
Production, they all liked it. Rick Berman said, the minute I saw the story, I fell in love with it. Dramatic relationships are so vivid. Guinan, who comes from a people who were destroyed by the Borg, Picard, who was brutalised and violated by the Borg, both are put in a position of being prejudiced. Geordi and Dr. Crusher are in the position of being open-minded and eventually sympathetic to this young man, and the end result is a wonderful series of relationships and wonderful scenes between Guinan and the Borg. The writing was wonderful and the acting great. Jerry Taylor said, I think it will become a classic. It's a wonderful comment and it's just real special. The Borg will never be the same again. You were wrong about that, Jerry. Mm-hmm. Michael Piller said, it was everything I want Star Trek to be. A great premise which forces both Guinan and Picard to confront their own prejudices. And you would think these are two characters who have none, but when it comes to the Borg, the old issue is know your enemy. It's a lot harder to hate them if you know them, and it deals with the issue of what happens to these communal Borgs, which cannot be treated as anything else but parts of the whole when one is separated and becomes an individual.
You may be wondering if anything happened to Hugh in extended Star Trek media after this episode. And of course, previously when we've spoken about this, it's usually been some horrific death. Like they get stabbed through the heart in a senseless way. And this is no different, really, because Hugh gets murdered in a book by a Romulan who's part of a secret cabal called the Jaffash. Oh, wait a minute, that was an actual spin-off.
Oh dear. Although
in the books he did meet Kirk and helped him with techniques to heal himself.
Oh, in the return.
In the original series novel Avenger.
I mentioned previously that you were in line in your thoughts with Phil Farrand. I did sort of praise that section when I said that. It is longer. I'm not sure that it's going great guns for disproving the cliche of sci-fi fans being a bit nerdy, just because it goes on and says the invasive program that will destroy the Borg turns out to be a picture. Supposedly it isn't possible to analyse the picture fully, so when Hugh attempts he won't be able to, and his subconscious will continue to work on it, and then when Hugh is re-assimilated the rest of the Borg will start working on it, and they won't be able to analyse the picture fully either, and finally they will all fall down because they are thinking so hard about this picture. This will not work! In the old days of personal computers, most had BASIC built in. BASIC is an easy-to-learn programming language. Kids who knew BASIC would get their yucks by going to a store with personal computers and typing the prompt, 1 print, I am going crazy, 2, go to 1, run. In a flash, the computer screen would fill with I am going crazy, madly flickering around as new lines scrolled onto the bottom and old lines popped over the top. Left alone, the computer would seamlessly putter this litany until a power failure or until its chips decayed. I mean, all fun and games around the Farrand house, clearly.
We've all done it. So why will it not work?
I don't know. He goes on for about another 2 pages with this.
I mean, to be fair, for once I do agree with him. It was a bit of a silly plan.
I mean, fine.
We're going to destroy our mortal enemy by showing them an angry shape.
I think it was to do with their sort of holographic 3D processing more than anything. They were using one of their strengths against them, so it works just fine.
Well, I don't think it would have worked.
Well,
you put it in your nitpicker's guide.
Well, that's us done for another episode. We will be back once again talking about the next phase. We hope you will join us for that one. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I would have liked him to use a magic eye picture, I think. Because, well, I was going to say, yeah, because, I mean, they don't work for me because I've got astigmatism in my eyes, so they just don't work. And I just like the idea of all the Borg on the cube just sat there, bringing a picture closer and further away from their face for the rest of time, and just stuck in a loop.
Just random alien races pass by and go, it's a sailboat.